There it is. I always find that a bit strange. Yeah, and so for the rest of the evening, I'm gonna briefly introduce Solmaz, but I'm really gonna leave it up to Solmaz to introduce the exhibition because I want to give all of you the pleasure of hearing her talk about it in her own words. So after a presentation by Solmaz, we're gonna open up the floor to questions. So if whilst that's happening, you are thinking of questions, you don't want to forget them, drop them in the chat. Alternatively, at the end of the presentation, you'll have the opportunity to unmic and we can all have a chat and hopefully a really nice open discussion. So, on to your little introduction of Solmaz, which I am going to read because Solmaz's achievements are too great and many for me to remember off the top of my head. So, on to that. Solmaz Farhang is an interdisciplinary artist based in London. She is a graduate of the MA Art and Science from the University of Applied Arts in Vienna, co-founder of the art and design collective Transformation Agency for Agency, and an associate lecturer of the University of Arts London. Solmaz's work spans and expands upon different disciplines, including photography, video, art assemblage, drawing, and multimedia installations. And I think we'll see a little bit of that through tonight's talk. Central to Solmaz's artistic practice is an exploration of storytelling and speculative thinking, through which she engages with themes of identity, ecology, and the relationship between humans and nature. I think we might see a little bit of that in tonight's talk as well. Solmaz has exhibited her work in venues such as the Forum Stadtpark in Graz, National History Museum of Vienna, the National Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Ars Electronica Linz, Museum Quarter of Vienna, and the European Capital of Culture in Novi Sad, Serbia. And that's just to name a few. So I think that's enough from me for now. And I'm going to hand over to you, Solmaz. So here we go.
Thanks so much, Lauren, for the introduction, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the talk. I will try also to share my screen and get started. Um, can everyone see my screen? Now, if not, yeah, great. So today, I, for the next 30-40 minutes, I will talk about my latest project in therapy with North Sea. As Lauren introduced, it is currently running at Humber Street Gallery in Hull. Um, and and then after that, we will have a Q&A. So I would look forward also to all the questions and discussions afterwards. So I would like to start with a bit of a context about the project, which is the changing of climate and the lives affected by the fast pace of land erosion in coastal areas, especially in East Yorkshire. And this contextualization of the work and this in the next slides will allow me to touch on the questions that we had in our mind while working together on the project with the team in the University of Hull and Humber Street Gallery. And you'll see hopefully how these concerns shape the idea behind the project. The photo that you're seeing is by a local farmer actually, and the marks that you see underneath, they are marking the loss of the land around Holderness during their lifetime. And they brought it in one of our community workshops in Hornsey. I will talk about it a bit later more. So the Yorkshire coast is one of the fastest eroding in Europe. 4.5 meters of land is lost every year to the sea. And more than 1,000 properties along the East Yorkshire coast could be lost actually. to the North Sea by 2055. The land erosion, though, is not something happening new or recently. It's a natural phenomenon, and it is also resulted from the type of the soil in these areas. But what is concerning is the pace of the land erosion. As the temperature of oceans rise, glaciers melting, and the sea level is also rising, storms happen more frequently, and the waves hit the land more strongly. Historically, there's been mitigation strategies put in place, such as Hornsey's Sea Defense Wall built in 1907. That's the picture that you see here is, I think it's the opening ceremony, and it's in the archive of, from the archive of Hornsey Museum when we visited the place. But as it's the case with any systematic environmental challenges, we could perhaps say that there is no easy solution. Here is an image from the same wall these days in Hornsey. So it does protect the land, but it also moves the trouble somewhere else. And scientists and researchers are still carrying out monitoring and researching to better understand where to put these defenses and what's the best practice. So there are quite sad facts. Now imagine discussing all these pressing issues with people who share memories with such an under threat land and with the sea, people who are losing their homes to the sea. I attended two workshops organized by Environment and Energy Institute of University of Hull, meeting people there. I mainly was taking notes, and what you see on the screen are some extracts of my notes that I took during those workshops, just listening and seeing what people how when they share their feelings and thoughts. I just let you read some of these. I quite like that. Is this came quite often I've heard, is it about the acceptance then? And also that it is an urgent thing and the biodiversity is changing. Also there are less butterflies and more mosquitoes. They were all observations of the people living in the area, sharing that with the researchers there. Then I attended another event that was CoStar Network launch event at the University of Hull. And I got a great chance of hearing from a more diverse range of people, from academics and researchers in the field across UK to institutions, communities, and educators working with children and young adults. And there were a couple of workshops I attended there, and these are the outcomes of some of the activities, people sharing their thoughts, their drawings, through writing on pebbles, where they were asked what North Sea reminds them or what memories. So you see some of the words written on the pebbles shared by the community attending the launch event in University of Hull. So during these discussions, the idea of acceptance and resilience came up quite often. And the burning question in my head was, what do we mean by resilience in practice? How do we build it? how do we accept the change? How should we overcome this kind of feeling of resistance towards change? And to follow on these questions, I met scientists from the University of Hull, Andrew Want, ecologist, Thomas Gottler, geologist, Ed Brooke, cultural geographer, and we discussed and I asked them what uh, they think, what does resilience mean in their discipline from their view. And with these conversations, it got clear to me that resilience could be interpreted and approached differently, and it can be a more dynamic and transformative way of approaching things, approaching the challenges. And one key reference was a paper also by Stephen Forrest I read. And here I read a quote from there, which says, alternatively, resilience can be interpreted as being more dynamic and seeking to challenge the underlying causes of disaster risk by advocating not simply bouncing back, but bouncing forwards. These interpretations of resilience may pay more attention to addressing pre-disaster vulnerabilities and to improve societal conditions through incremental adaptation or more radical transformative shifts. So he addresses the pre-disaster vulnerabilities and the importance of change in societal conditions. So after all these conversations, and I was at North Seashore with a head full of thoughts and questions. And the more I thought about it, the more I got convinced about the importance of addressing our vulnerabilities in time of crisis and the long-lasting impact of our feelings on our life choices. Adam Farrer, in his book Cold Fish Soup, writes, while memories fade and buildings drop from sight in the billowing clouds of brick dust, scars remain. I fully expect mine to outlast my home on the cliffs. It's worth mentioning that Farrer, the writer of the Cold Fish Soup that I just quoted, is originally from Withernsea in East Yorkshire. And in his autobiographical book, he writes about another incident where he is hit by a piece of driftwood while swimming in North Sea. And the way he tells the story with all the emotions involved is quite moving. And so I made a note of it. And he talks about his experience swimming in the North Sea and then ends it with this sentence. So we broke up and I decided to see other waters. Another thing that I was always kind of stick to my mind while through the process of ideation of the work was another photographer that I came across during one of my visits in Hull, a photo by Colin Gray at Farron's Art Gallery. And it addresses Gray's fear of flood and is inspired by a recurring dream that he's had. So, and this photo he took with his parents in their home. So again, feelings, emotions, and our unconscious dreams turn to be what I could not stop thinking about in the context of living with the crisis. So all of these got me thinking, what if we look at North Sea um, as a person with whom we are in a relationship, with all the histories and feelings that we've had with North Sea and we are having. What would it take to work on this relationship? What would we do? A therapy, maybe? So here we come to my kind of initial sketches that I brought to Lauren and Marianne in the first place when we discussed the initial ideas. So we talked through the concept of personification of North Sea and the idea of kind of looking into the exhibition as a therapy and going to a therapy with North Sea. And from the beginning, I had this idea of having different kind of chairs. So the chairs is an element that you usually see in the therapy. It was kind of a starting point. I played a bit with that. And here you see some of the sketches. They've changed a lot later on, but I think they were quite a interesting base to start from. And at the same time, I was looking into meaning of home as well. And I was wondering how I can address that because it was a lot also about this attachment to the meaning of home. And what could we do to enable us to look at it differently? Can we associate it more with a feeling when talking about home, or instead of kind of, or is it for necessarily a piece of land in a particular geographic location? Emmanuel Cochia, in the book Philosophy of the Home, addresses these questions really nicely. Here, a quote from the book is: "A home is a space where life can circulate freely between bodies. It offers a sort of magic that allows people and objects to become twins, at least for a moment." So, having those concepts of home in mind, I and also the therapy, I kind of knew at this point what I want to address and what I want to talk about in this exhibition. But I wasn't quite sure about the setup, how I want to present it, how I want to materialize it. Something was in the back of my head, but it was kind of blurry and hard to grasp. But while digging in and sketching, I also remembered an exhibition that I visited back in 2023 at Hayward Gallery. The Extinction Beckons by Mike Nelson. What I liked about the exhibition was the way he created a sense of a kind of a left behind house, home, place that people have lived in, but using objects to tell the story about the life of those people, who they were, and but through kind of using those objects and also stuff that you could see in the roof, like that is left in the rooftop. Um, so that was kind of quite inspirational, one of the inspirations, I'd say. And then while I was back in London with my head busy with all these thoughts, I also made notes of these tubes and cables and stuff that are underneath our houses that are sometimes coming out of our yards and that you just see them around everywhere in the city. Um, so I made a note of that as well. And they reminded me of these images from the land getting eroded and the cables and tubes all coming out, and then we see all these things underneath in the ground. So that's kind of, I think, where I knew what my installations are going to be made of. And that brings us to the development phase of the project. And I will briefly, in the next following slides, talk about kind of sourcing the materials and the final design of the exhibition. So while finalizing sketches for the installation, I also started to look for suitable materials. This is a scrap store, maybe familiar with some of the people in Southwest London. It's a really nice store. They kind of all these material are prevented from going to the landfill, and yeah, kind of a really nice way of recycling a material. So I took some of these collected stuff there. I found really nice color gel. They were donated by a um, film studio. It's not the very necessary information, but it was interesting. Just yeah, using LED lights has changed studios, and there were lots of these gels. So I encourage people to go there, that you can find treasure in this store. So yeah, the chair, looking for the chairs everywhere at some corners of London, and also looking into the catalog of Toolstation, which was also inspiring. Um, while doing that for the installations, I also, as as Lauren said, a multimedia artist, I like to work with different medias, video, sound, and I was also sketching for the video shoot. And after a couple of takes and tryouts, I made a video that I will show you briefly in a video documentation of the exhibition. Um, and there, here things are starting to kind of get finalized. What you see, measurements are there, and we are getting started to install. With wonderful technical team at the gallery. So things are starting to take shape, and while the sketches from the time when I knew that it's going to be about therapy, and also the initial sketches that I showed you earlier, I had a couple of kind of stations in mind. One of the stations that from the beginning was about the breathing, and this becoming kind of aware of the air that we share with each other. So the air was always there when I was thinking about this station, but the shape of it changed through the time. I wanted to engage the audience more, and I thought, what can I use and things like that. And then it was also a very clever suggestion of my partner about the ventilation tubes. And he's an architect, so it was really nice idea, and I followed up on that, and we sketched this one. The earlier sketches were more tubes and so on, and then I turned them into these bigger tubes that can also show channeling the air that we share. And yeah, so this is kind of something that is very close to what you see at the end in the exhibition. The 3D model of it to get an idea of, because also I was working from distance, I had to communicate well with the technicians in the gallery. So technical drawing was also kind of necessary and quite helpful. And this is the final work. The breath station that you see on the left is what you see in the exhibition. And the audience were invited to engage with it. Here you see some details of the installation. We had both plastic plants and natural plants, and we had an aquarium. Another view of tubes. Some of them are going also to the ceiling, to the ground, to the stones, to the waters, and also to each other, the people, to the fish. Another station was to listen. When talking about the therapy, it's always about really in getting engaged, to listen carefully to to the person that you're going to the therapy with, that you're working on the relationship with. In order to work on the relationship, you need to listen to each other. And North Sea has a lot of voices that we can't hear. And I collected the voices, the sounds of the deep sea, where you hear marine life there, and also you hear some noises of the vessels that is kind of in the surface, and the fish vessels that are kind of the noise that the human is making, and you can hear in the sea. So this was the initial sketches. I wanted it to be in the north side of the gallery, facing Humber and North Sea. And for the material, I was thinking of the water, and then I thought, because I wanted to make it from the building materials, I decided to use the gutter tubes. And the rain is coming, and then these tubes are used there. And also some ductures and some sand to have the seaside also there. Play a bit also with that. Here you see the exhibition. And there were speakers here that you could listen to the sound of the North Sea. It was easier to get the sound of the ocean, but I insisted I want the sound of the North Sea, and the sound that we could get was quite in kind support of the um, scientists from Scotland. And here you see how the audience could interact with the installation. The third station was to dream up. This one probably was, the other ones, the audience were more active in terms of interacting with the installation, but this one I wanted the audience to have time to think, and I wanted to talk more about the possibilities that can come into mind while you are thinking of doing absurd things. I think the text tells it better. Let's dislocate and reposition things. Let's dream up new possibilities. Let's jump out of the ordinary and imagine other ways of seeing and living together. Let's find new ways of expressing our feelings, thoughts, and dreams. The videos that we had there were two videos opposing each other in opposing walls, and there were one on the floor. The one on the floor was a thermographic stop motion from melting ice cubes in water. And the two others uh, were kind of, you can see some stills here, um, really about repositioning objects and some um, kind of surreal scenes that are difficult to explain here. But hopefully you get the idea. Um, And in the design of the exhibition, I wanted to have this transitional space, a corridor to get prepared before entering the therapy. And we included the research parts in this corridor. The audience could kind of go through either before going in getting inside or and or as, after visiting the exhibition and going to the therapy. And here I end my presentation with a video documentation of the. So, yeah, that was it from my side. I look forward to the questions in the room. Thank you. I stop sharing.
Wow. Thank you so much, Salma. There was so much in that presentation that I think was really rich, but also I think seeing the research that all of which led into the exhibition. Um, in my role, naturally, I work really closely with Solmaz, so I have the privilege of seeing that stuff all the way through. And yet still I learn new things, but also I think it's really great that you've opened this out to the audience as well. Because it is lovely to see the things, the different things that have influenced you or have made a mark and ultimately come through into the exhibition. So we're going to open up the floor for some questions, but I think just to warm everyone up, I will start. But like I said before, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. Or if you feel comfortable, you can put your hand up and a mic. There's not many of us in the room, so we can be really open and have hopefully a nice informal discussion. But yeah, I'll kick things off with the first question. So, I think you kind of alluded to it, Solmaz, within your presentation. But there is a real element of playfulness in your work. The videos of you that sit within the space that are part of the dreaming station, they're
Mhm,
so playful. There's an element of the absurd to them.
mhm.
And I'm just wondering if this playfulness as a tool helps broach complex subjects such as climate change. And yeah, what do you think the relationship is to playfulness in your practice?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you, Lauren. Um, I think playfulness comes both in the process of making for me, and also it is reflected in the end into the work itself and the way it interacts with people. And I like to think that that approach to specifically to such complex themes like climate change and that which can already when you see the beginning when I was presenting the facts about the climate change and the erosion of land, it can be quite upsetting and create a kind of a sense of anxiety. And I think it's not a very good starting point by creating a sense of anxiety. I like to think that this lightness, that this playfulness brings, can open up discussions, um, can also make space for uncertainties, make space for thinking differently, thinking about the solutions that may be off the table from from the kind of how to say from realities of established kind of sort of thinking, and that can open up possibilities. So I see the role of my role as an artist to open up that space of uncertainty through this yeah playfulness and also humor and also this touch of absurd. I think is also helpful when you put yourself maybe in a even an embarrassing situation, then but you can go crazy, and that's the time when ideas for change can come up and can actually prepare us for the change that we were talking about in the beginning in the research that came up also quite often in the discussions with the community. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I really liked what you said there around it helps us sit more comfortably in that which is uncomfortable or
Mm.
uncertain. And I think the exhibition certainly brings a sense of lightness,
Mm.
but without necessarily kind of like skirting over the reality of thing. It's just kind of offering but in the kind of playful approach is a more constructive or just a different kind of approach to a certain subject, which I think is really fascinating. There's one question in the chat which I'll start with, and then someone else has got their hand up. So Ulrike has asked a question, and they would like to hear more about your interaction with the scientists. If you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Uli. Thanks for the question. About the hi.
Hi,
So
good to
about the
see you.
scientists, yeah. Um, I I would say so the conversation with scientists started from the beginning throughout they facilitated also the community engagement, and they gave insight to what it means to kind of to what it means from the way that they are approaching both people and engaging their views to the research that they are doing, how they can implement that into their research. Um, and also we had discussions about the the meaning of resilience, which was really interesting. How in their work they were also saying that it is quite different from the point of view geologist and a biologist, and also um, uh, people who are doing also this researchers working on the energy aspects of it and technological aspects of it. Um, yeah, so that was the interaction with scientists that I've had, I would say. Um,
Do you think that it's actually featured in the output? Can you like point to that? Was there like a two-way, but you really, you know, that
mhm.
it's a back and forth, or was it more of a one way and kind of blurred into and you can't really point to it?
Mm, good question. Um, I think it was mainly during the ideation process that came into play, into kind of the work, the conversations that I've had with scientists. And I'm hoping that it continues in terms of listening and seeing what are the impacts of the exhibition on the people, community visiting the exhibitions and the workshops that are held there. So yeah, I think it's more yeah, that way. Hopefully, I hope after the exhibition it gets more clear what are the impacts and how is it, because they're opening a space for the new possibilities that I was talking about is also for the researchers who are visiting and the scientists who are visiting the exhibition and researchers who are involved. Maybe some of these strategies can also be implemented in the workshops that they have with the community. I don't know.
I think just to jump in, there's a really interesting kind of difference. I mean, there's lots of similarities, but there's probably naturally quite a lot of differences in the way an artist or a scientist approaches a certain topic. And I think what's been really nice about this project is seeing the two kind of blend together, or at least meet at different certain points. I think it's what I've really enjoyed seeing is seeing scientific research brought to life in a completely different way. And I know Solmaz, having spoken to some of the researchers that have been on the project, Ed, Bryony, that is kind of the feeling as well, that it's like scientists spend so much time kind of like, I guess, researching and putting together what is generally papers, but bringing that to life in a different way, I think is really beneficial for them, but also for audiences who, like I personally, would find it really hard to access some of the themes that are presented in Solmaz's exhibition. Were they presented to me in like a book? That's different for other people, but I think what's really beautiful about bringing different disciplines together is it just opens up different access points for different people.
Yeah.
Um, Kate, you've got your hand up. Would you like to unmute and ask a question? Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for the talk. It was really fascinating. I was just interested, like having listened to and spent time with the North Sea, is there a word or a series of words that you could use to describe its character or sort of characteristics?
Oh God. Um, Thanks, Kate, for the question and for coming. Oh, I must say, I didn't manage to swim in North Sea because it was really cold during that time that I visited North Sea. Um, and part of my association with North Sea also comes from the books I've read and what I've heard from people. So it's not very first-hand, I would say, relationship with the North Sea. It was so I did my best to get to know North Sea, um, and um, so maybe that's why I designed the therapy to listen to get to know North Sea better, um, and it is, I think, a conflicting feeling. Um, and I think it's the case with also I've did another project with Danube, River Danube, and I think that what strikes me into all these kind of projects that I'm doing around the environmental issues is this conflicting relationship that we have with nature. We are vulnerable, of course, towards nature. We have done throughout centuries things to keep ourselves safe, to make things, to work around it, and now we are in at the point that we think, okay, maybe we should have done differently, and um, I think that's the thing that I would still work on, because it's an open question for me also. What is this relationship? How can we address that? How can we be more honest and open about it? Um, it has a romantic side to it, of course, but it has also another kind of this kind of frustrations and a bit of maybe anger or concern. What would happen to our children? What would happen to the next generations? What would happen? So it's existential questions. So yeah, it's difficult. It's complicated. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
I have another question, if I may. But if anyone does have anything else, put it in the chat or yeah, keep it in your brain. But I'm curious to know, Solmaz, a lot of your work and this exhibition isn't any exception to that. Is asking something of the audience or the visitor to the gallery, or at least if they're not asking it, they're inviting something from them. So I'm curious to know about that, about the role of intervention in your work, or the role of somebody taking part in your work in a little way.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a good question too. Um, I think whenever it's really first of all joyful to see how people come into the installation, interact, look around how it works, what is it about, and then and see them. It's like having a theater set, and the people are real people are the players of this theater. Um, I think also, and one it grew it my work it grew kind of gradually in my work that I found it more and more interesting to engage people fully and engage in different senses, and also this kind of bodily experience. And in this occasion, also, I think what it offers is also the time. It offers the audience to spend more time with the installation, with the work, um, to create a conversation kind of with the audience. Even if it's the video and sitting there and watching the video, it's a little bit maybe with a bit of a distance, but I tried also to engage them in make a space that it is more engaging. And when they sit and listen, they were quite, I saw people sitting there for long and listening. And I think that aspect of it too, in a time that everything is going fast, 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 it just making the audience to take time, sit and kind of yeah, make time and spend time with the work would help that they remember hopefully later on, that they reflect on it later on a bit more, um, stays in their mind this experience with them. Um, yeah. And also there is, I want to also differentiate between disengagement. I try to have it also a bit subtle, that it doesn't turn to an entertainment. Um, it is fun, of course, it is playful, but it is about going deeper. And that's where I want to differentiate. I want to have that playfulness, I want to have that lightness, I want to have that engagement and element of, um, I don't know. Yeah, but I don't want to make it entertaining, if it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. And I think hi, you do there's a beautiful balance there. And I think that the word invitation seems to fit it quite well
Yeah.
because I think it relates back to a previous something that's come up in this conversation around different access points. And I like the way you leave it open for the audience to decide exactly how they're going to engage with each station. I mean, there's a really subtle hint,
Mm.
but I like the way there's an openness to it as well. Um, just wondering if anyone has any other questions. I have loads of questions, but I don't want to necessarily hog the floor. But I'll ask one more question, and then if anyone does have any burning questions, please, this is your chance. Yeah, Solmaz, I I want to touch on the title of the exhibition,
Hmm.
In Therapy with North Sea, and your decision to kind of relate to the sea as a person is really strong. And I love the follow through that that has in the title. And I just wish you would speak a little bit about the yeah, the process of picking a title for an exhibition and what that's like, because it's like I work with a lot of artists and I cannot like every time like people come up with really really kind of poetic or exciting titles for their work, and I'm just curious to know what the process of that was like for you.
Sure. Yes, I explained really briefly, touched on it briefly, uh, that that kind of emotional aspects of like my approach in terms of making a space in this exhibition for our emotions, our feelings, our dreams. And also the question that Emma Kate asked also in terms of how do we find North Sea? And this kind of so I really wanted to talk about relationships, and I was thinking, okay, relationships usually to make it more tangible, um, maybe we look at North Sea as a person, then we can talk all about the history that we have with North Sea, about our uh, love, affection, our frustration, and then uh, turning North Sea into a person or personification of North Sea. I thought it could help. And we also had this discussion of dropping the North Sea to really give North Sea the name, a person. Um, and yeah, hopefully it worked also kind of yeah, worked with the people who made them curious to know what is it all about. Yeah, so I think that would be um, my answer to that one. We had the discussion about it in therapy with Norton, about the wording of it and so on. And I think I'm happy with it now.
I was just thinking that I can't imagine it with a the in it, because you're right.
Yeah.
We did have like a bit of back and forth, didn't we, between,
Mm.
that do we include the there? But of course not, because it's so integral to the exhibition that we're humanizing this entity. So yeah, I think it's a really fitting title. Um, if nobody else has any questions, we'll round up, but I'll just give one more opportunity in case anyone does. Let's have a look.
Thanks, Monica. Thanks for coming.
Fab. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Solmaz. I think this has been such a lovely thing to do on a Friday evening. Like I said before, I've been really lucky enough to already know a lot about this exhibition, having worked really closely with you, but I still feel like yeah, like I've learnt more stuff, which is always great. Just want to thank everybody for coming, for asking questions, and I just want to say that In Therapy with North Sea is open at Humber Street Gallery until the 18th of May. We'd really love it if as many of you can come to see it. It's such a wonderful exhibition. Solmaz is really brought to life a lot of the themes and research that we've been speaking about over the course of this talk. And the only way to do it justice is to come and experience the exhibition. And then a final thing from me is that if you've really enjoyed hearing Solmaz speak, which I'm sure you have tonight, we have an event on Thursday, the 24th of April, which is going to be a panel discussion. Solmaz will be on the panel, and it's going to be a roundtable exploring how creatives and scientists can come together to address global challenges such as climate change. So there's more information about that on the Humber Street Gallery website. But I think the last thing to do is a final thank you. And yeah, I hope that everyone has a lovely evening and weekend.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren, also.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nice. Good stuff.
Oh, thanks so much, Lauren,
Oh,
for
that was great. Did you have fun? I think that was really fun.
cozy one.
Huh?
That
Oh,
was
it
a
was really
cozy one.
great. It was fun. It was great. So I recorded the session, so I'll get it sent over to you. Might be a nice thing to keep.
Yes, yes. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Are
You
you
have a
doing
lovely.
anything? Sorry, what were you saying?
You have you're planning anything for today evening?
I'm gonna go and like go for a bit of a walk before it gets dark. Because I feel really like inspired now, so I think I need to like go and have a nice walk and full of energy, so that'll be good. What about yourself?
Yeah, same. That was fun. Yeah, I really
It
enjoyed it. So yeah,
was
fun.
fun. Amazing. All right, cool. Well, I'll send you the link to this, but I hope you have a really nice weekend, and I'll probably see you next at the panel discussion.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I hope you have a good weekend.
You too.
Really nice speaking to you. Bye.